Have you ever woken up Christmas morning, rushed to the tree to see what Santa left with your name on it, of course, knowing that it was actually your parents who bought and wrapped and placed the gifts, started tearing off the paper full of expectation, months of dropping hints, sometimes even directly stating what you want? Will it be what you set your heart on? The box seems the right size. When you shake it, it sounds right. Heart pounding, you open it up and find socks. Lots of socks. Nice socks. And who doesn't need socks in the long run, so you shouldn't complain, but you really wanted that Star Wars action set. Or for today's kids, maybe a PS5 or new Nintendo Switch. But it's socks. Christmas will come again in a year, and that seems like a long time away. That was how I felt after I finished Alien Earth Episode 8. Alien Earth Season 1 is over, and what am I left with? Just the feeling of meh. Episode 8, the season finale, was underwhelming. It's taken a few days to get even motivated enough to make this video. My passion has been drained away so much. I feel strange saying Season 1 and season finale when I don't even know if there will be a Season 2. Maybe that is part of the problem. The creators wanted to end with a sense of closure in case it all stops here, so this final episode has a very rushed tone. A lot of things are wrapped up, but loose ends are not tied up. And they really chose the most obvious endings for some plot lines. There's nothing impressive, surprising, or satisfying about how things ended. The worst thing, and this is the real killer for any series that polishes off its first season, is that I don't feel any emotional investment in any of the characters. I almost had some for a few people, but as the credits rolled at the end of episode 8, no one was in real jeopardy, and I found myself not caring what happened next for the most part. But there's a lot of potential moving forward, so if a second season comes out, I will probably check it out. Let's take a look at how they decided to wrap up Season 1. For the Lost Boys, Toodles is gone, but we've heard about Reboot and Restore, so there's at least a chance we will see that actor again as that character. What opportunities are opened to us? Well, maybe all of the hybrids can be restored in some way, from a downloaded base template of the child's mind they came from. What if we see two Wendys, and the other hybrids don't know which one is the first one? There's potential here. For that matter, what if the graves we saw didn't actually house the remains of the terminally ill children? What if they were just empty, and no one knew except Boy Cavalier and Kirsch? What if the children were kept on ice in cryosleep in case there was a need to retransfer their minds into synthetic bodies? How jarring would it be for Hermit to talk to his actual little sister, bald and sick and vulnerable, while standing next to her hybrid form? What would that do to Wendy? There is potential here. I'm wandering off into my own imagination again, thinking about what might be in my Christmas present instead of the socks that I got. This seems to be how the creator, Noah Hawley, wants things, though. A big part of what I try to do as a visual storyteller is always to engage the audience's imagination. Too much of what we watch treats us as passive viewers, so if the worst thing that happens is that the audience has to finish this story, I trust them to come up with some good ways to go forward. That reads like he doesn't expect a second season, which is not precisely true. I'm pretty confident, given the show's success, that we'll get to make more. The risk is the reward. Anyway, back to the socks. Is Nibs still insane? Her memory wipe seems to have corrected her trauma and her belief that she was pregnant, but she also seems hyper-violent and on the verge of madness, so who can say? She offed some nobodies, but didn't do anything to Dame. Just unresolved plot elements. Curly has regained her original name, Jane, after curling up in Dame's lap and calling her mom. She has sided with Wendy pretty solidly and abandoned being Cavalier's favorite and her ambitions about being more and doing something for humanity. Who is she? This doesn't track with her development so far, but maybe I was putting my own tracks in front of the Curly train. Slightly has grown a pair. Morrow promised that he didn't hurt Slightly's mom, and I believe him, but This put-upon hybrid is not taking any more crap. Morrow has lost his leverage and his stooge. But what is Slightly's arc in the end? Smee is a big nothing. The only hybrid not to get any kind of development or exploration into his motivations and hopes. The only one who is ridiculously childlike in behavior. Some people have suggested that Morrow is Hook and Slightly was his Smee. But Smee is Smee, no? That name was assigned by Cavalier, so I held out hope that the hybrid Smee had some other agenda, since Smee was technically a pirate and not a lost boy. It seems nope. Then we have Wendy, or Marcy, and Hermit. At the end of episode 7, Hermit was disturbed by the violence unleashed by what he thought was his sister and her strange control of the xenomorph. Seeing the grave supposedly housing Marcy's remains, seeing Wendy ready to use her pet against his friends, seeing Nibs tear one's face apart, and siding with his old squad mates, all of this pointed to Hermit's allegiance wavering. Nope, he's still on the Wendy train. His Chekhov's gun of a cybernetic lung, mentioned by Morrow, didn't go off. Wendy seems to have doubled down on not being human and siding with the alien species over her former species. Why does her hybrid form have abilities the others don't? Why is her hybrid capable of manipulating technology, if that was not built into her hardware? Why is Cavalier surprised by this ability if it was unintended? Wendy can access anything connected to the system on the Neverland Island research base, so she immobilized the bald synth. Saw that coming, actually. I get it that xenomorphs appear biomechanical, but why is Wendy able to hear their signal and communicate with them, yet Curly and the other hybrids are not? I was hoping for some explanation, but nope. It just seems like a plot contrivance now. Disappointing. More sucks. We get some exposition dumping about Cavalier. Kirsch talks about Boy's massive ADHD and the medication he needs to regulate it, how it causes impulse control issues. But where was this earlier in the series? It explains some of the decisions Cavalier made, and some fans had surmised this handicap, but Kirsch just threw it out there, and Cavalier got unhinged afterwards. Lazy writing. Then Cavalier talked about building his first synth when he was, 6? And using it to off his daddy? Did he then inherit wealth? Did he invent the whole synth technology? Is that what Prodigy got famous for? It is nice to hear that he is actually a genius, but showing is better than telling, and they didn't show it and barely told anything. And speaking of synths, Morrow mentioned how many synths he's killed when he was in the elevator with Kirsch. So that means synth technology existed before the Maginot mission. So I think Cavalier didn't invent synth technology. So what is Prodigy actually built on? Morrow and Kirsch had their showdown, and Morrow beat the stuffing out of the synthetic. Still got choked out, though. They both wound up in a cell with Dame and Cavalier, so none of the baddies got their just rewards. In fact, no one of any real consequence died, did they? Aside from Toodles, apparently, and Arthur, who I'll talk about later. Only nameless soldiers getting chopped down left and right, including Hermit's barely there squad mates. Oh, that brings me to the boring debut of the pod creature, scampering around on the wall behind our oblivious Prodigy soldiers like the old lady on the ceiling in Exorcist 3. So laughable. Then it hangs there and slurps one person up, who guns down the rest as she panics and perishes, just crushed and raining down blood. Boring. The ticks were gross and showed intelligence when they escaped from the canister and delivered some horror. The flying bugs ate Toodles' face and showed the mortality of the hybrids. The xenomorph worked as a blur on the screen or a menace in the shadows, but most of the time it was an obvious man in suit and wasn't working for me. As a monster, it is only as effective as the writers want it to be at any given moment. The eyeball dude, though, star of the series. Cavalier deciding to offer it someone weaker to be its host, and choosing Hermit instead of Dame. Boring and obvious. Hermit was fending it off pretty well. The little dude seems sturdy and survived some serious tossing around. Where did it end up? On the beach, piloting Arthur's corpse. Now that is baller. Baller? Things seemed so rushed and inconclusive, and I'm less interested in seeing what happens next. I could put up with plot issues in the hopes that things would pay off later on, but episode 8 was a letdown. Now what seemed like stupidity on behalf of certain characters is only explained as actual stupidity, and lapses in logic are on the writers' heads, not the characters. Yet, Christmas comes every year, and if there's a season 2, I'm already imagining what is in the box. Weyland-Yutani forces were flying in to mop up the Neverland Research Island base and reclaim the alien species. This might be like the start of season 2 of Westworld, and people with no clue what is happening get in over their heads, or perhaps like Aliens. That's a better comparison. What if the invading forces shut down the island's network, breaking Wendy's control of the bald synth, allowing him to rescue Cavalier and Kirsch? What if Cavalier has some emergency protocols he can verbally enact, fail-safes embedded in Smee, for instance, or a shutdown code for Hermit's lung? What if Toodles is restored and his loyalty is still with Kirsch? What if the kids are on ice, as I hope, and really mess up the hybrid's senses of identity and Hermit's personal priorities? Does the eyeball want to free Cavalier and collaborate with him against the xenomorph threat? Will Weyland-Yutani forces be fooled by this false Arthur, maybe wearing a stylish eyepiece? The real theme of this series is about life, natural life versus augmented life versus artificial life. For example, we have Boy Cavalier versus Moro or Hermit with their cybernetic enhancements versus the hybrids. And on the natural side, I suppose we have all of the alien species as well. What is humanity's way forward? Will this be further explored in a future season? Yes, there is a lot of potential. Why episode 8 squandered it all is beyond me. I can only hope that the next gift I open has something in it. I have enough socks. If you enjoyed this video, let me know by leaving a like or a comment, and perhaps subscribing to my channel for more videos like this one. Thanks for watching. See you next time.